are super funny.
Why on earth did you not tell me you started
I
it?
did tell you.
No, you
Yeah,
didn't.
I
That's a
said it. I said
lie.
it's working.
That's a lie. She did not say anything. Hi. Hi. How do you feel about Keenan's recent progress? I haven't seen it. Thoughts on total weekly volume if all sets are 0 RIR? If all your sets are 0 RIR, then your weekly volume is going to fall somewhere in the range that I always recommend, which is somewhere between 4 to 12. Right? Very, very rarely will I ever go above 12 sets for a muscle group. And 12 is honestly pretty out of the ordinary. But that's also taking into account the fact that I'm pretty specific with my muscle work. So I don't typically count I don't typically do a lot of compound movements, right? Compound movements can kind of blur that line for a lot of people. Or I should say, I don't do the majority of my work as compound movements. Am I into watches? Not really. Please make your fat loss manual free for a day. I need it and am broke. Get your money up. It's not that much. If you can't find a way to make 27 bucks, then that's a bigger issue than you buying my fat loss manual. I hear 10 to 20 still recommended by studies, but I do like 4 to 6. So here's the issue, right? When you run into studies that I would say the majority of studies that will get you in the 10 to 20 range, if they're getting all the way up to 20, it's typically because of the fact that they're leaving RIR. So I would be very, very surprised if you could do 20 sets truly to failure and recover well from it. Unk fell off. It's true. I don't even know how many people are in here. Let me make a little note on Instagram. Live on YouTube. There we go. What's up with this lag? Tori, is it lagging? That's you. I don't know. They said there's a lag. Your camera is lagging. Tori, they say it's lagging. A lot, apparently very laggy. I don't know. I don't know, guys. I wish I knew. Sorry. Sorry. Optimal 2.0 is crazy. Appreciate it. Are you starting your own company? I don't know. Where's my t-shirt from? A friend got it for me. What hair growth treatment should I take to minimally affect my hormones? So your hair treatment is probably going to affect your hormones regardless. At least mine does. So I'm on dutasteride, and it does lower my DHT levels. So some people will say that's an issue. I have not had any issues with it. It's been fine for me, but hey. What's the most filling foods per calorie apart from protein sources? Celery. Just go bald? I might have to at some point. What would you say is the ideal bulk to cut time ratio? There isn't one. Your ideal is literally to just keep building and never cut, right? Cutting is more catabolic, so there's literally no ideal ratio. Your hair is enhanced? I guess so. I guess so. Oh my goodness. Khalid, a little bit excited. A little bit excited. What's up, Dro? What are my thoughts on deloading? I don't. If you need to do it reactively, go ahead. But I don't. Hop on roids. Might have to. Might have to. Being natural and getting to the point where you just don't make as much progress as you once did. Sucks, man. Sucks. Thoughts on eating 3 kilograms of celery to help with satiety? Ooh, it's a definitely a method. It is a method of all time. Hmm. YouTube streams are much better than the TikTok ones. Nice. Am I planning on using Reddit anytime soon? I would only be able to use Reddit if I wasn't competing naturally. Did you get big by just bulking a lot? No, I got big by lifting a lot. There were times when I ate more calories than I needed to, but as long as you eat enough, you'll be able to get big. uh, what do you think of the claim that 80% of gear now is fake? I mean, maybe if you have crappy sources. How do you overcome plateaus if you don't deload? What do you mean? Why would a deload help you overcome a plateau? If you can explain that, then I'll tell you that you need to take deloads. I am doing well. I'm doing well. How are you doing? Could you briefly explain the whole overhead tricep extension causes significantly more growth than normal extensions? And if that's true, because I see the claim online, aren't they similar? I mean, it's honestly, people have so overplayed the triceps argument that it got people to believe that an overhead tricep extension legitimately doesn't work the long head, which is so dumb. Like I honestly have just watched that whole thing uh go up and I'm like, guys, that's just not true. And then people get mad about me saying that. And then and now like there's other science-based people who are fighting back against it online. They're like, "No, it definitely does." It's like you got to take a look at the study designs and stuff like that and you'll realize that it still does. It's been a crap fest. Asked my bio teacher, would two people eating the same amount of calories, 2,000, one ate celery, one ate ice cream. She dead butt told me the one eating ice cream would get fatter. They absolutely would. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand enough about metabolism, thermic effect of food, anything like that. They absolutely would get fatter and a lot fatter. How many hours do I work a week? A lot. A lot. I have a hard time putting work down. What are your thoughts on one set to absolute failure for muscle growth? It depends on the context. So if you take one set to failure, but you do it multiple times a week, then you'll probably do pretty well. But if you do one set to failure once a week, then it's probably going to be tough for you to grow maximally. Tough, if not impossible. LOL broke the guy's ego. No, I mean like if you were going to argue with other people about things you don't fully understand yourself, then I'm going to roast you. Spend time with the family. I spend time with them all day. My wife doesn't. My wife works for me, so I'm literally with her all hours of the day. Have you ever rinsed 80/20 or 85/15 ground beef or boil it? Like, so how much fat do you think it removes? It's going to depend on how much you do. I mean, it's just dependent on how you do it. But no, I don't because I'm not to that level of cheap. I just get the leaner beef if I want that. What happens on the seventh rep? I don't know. Pretty much the same thing that would happen on the sixth or eighth rep. How important is exercise order if gym is crowded? I mean, people have basically overplayed everything, right? So what you see is you see people, they want to have a level of self-importance that they haven't earned. And because of that, they make things more important than they are in order to make you feel more dependent upon them. So when it comes to various topics within science-based lifting, like exercise order, unilateral exercises, stability, etc., it's like, yes, they all matter to an extent, but when you make them more important than they are, you'll start stressing over things that you don't need to stress over. If you need to go out of order for your exercises because somebody's been on a machine for 20 minutes, you'll be okay. All right, it's not a huge deal. Can't get the beef any leaner over here, unfortunately. It's too bad. What do I think of Case and hopping on? I mean, everybody has to make that decision for themselves. I have not tried Imperial Fitness. How much muscle can you realistically put on before you compete again? It's hard to say, right? So, right now, if I have any more muscle than the last time I competed, it's not much. I can't train my legs to the same extent, just because I'd been dealing with that knee issue for a long time. So now I'm just getting back into various training modalities that I couldn't train for a long time. So we'll see, but it's hard to say. Once you get to a certain point in your career, muscle growth is just very, very slow. I see on your TikTok lives you stopped training erectors. Is that why you started SLDLs again? I just like SLDLs. They're fun, right? Like I did the erector exercise that I showed you guys on YouTube. I did for maybe like 3 weeks, but I told you guys straight up, I'm like, if you don't need extra erector work, you don't need to do it, right? And my erectors are pretty darn solid. So for me, doing the SLDLs is more than enough to keep them up. Oh man, bro went to ChatGPT and it took him that long to come back. Man, plateaus often happen due to CNS fatigue accumulation from training to failure for a long time, 12 weeks, for example. So a deload is a must to recover CNS, and not training to failure is not optimal, you know? Yeah, that's not true. So, first off, you don't need to train to failure in order to grow. Second off, 12 weeks. Why'd you come up with 12 weeks? Why not 16? Why not 20? Where did 12 weeks come from? No, you just basically don't understand how fatigue works. So you assume that you have to accumulate CNS fatigue and it needs to build over the course of weeks and weeks. It's just not the way it works. You can accumulate fatigue, dissipate fatigue, accumulate fatigue, dissipate fatigue, and you don't need a deload in order to do that. If you did, then you'd have to deload after every workout or every two workouts, right? Because the CNS fatigue just keeps accumulating, right? You were at like 50, now you're at 55, now you're at 60, now you're at 65, and it just keeps going. Like, okay, well, you should have deloaded at 4 weeks then. It's like, there's no logic to it. Now, I'm not saying that people don't overtrain. People absolutely do. And that's why I say a reactive deload, right? You end up overtraining and then you take a deload because you overtrained. But if you're purposely overtraining, that's going to lead to deloads. Yeah, I don't know why it's lagging. I'm texting my tech support. Yes, Planet Fitness is good for beginners. It's fine for advanced too. Uh, did you see the Titan Go gym pin? Yeah, he's supposed to be sending me one. Hopefully it should be in sometime soon. Mr. Buffcakes, how you doing? I'm doing well. Is Tori the tech support? She is. She is. Why are you more serious on YouTube? I think I'm just answering questions more often. And people are a little bit more serious here. People are more on TikTok, people are more brain rotty. Love the Echo straps. Don't know what I'd be doing without them. Probably using another pair of straps, to be honest. Uh, any Indians to help us with the lagging? Seriously, seriously, I need some tech support here. What do I do, guys? What do I do? Um, let's see, let's see. Gotta be something. Settings. Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing. Have you tried the carnivore diet? I have. It's like any other diet. Probably not the best for performance, but you can use it during periods where you want to. If Raw offered you a better paycheck, would you leave Echo? Raw probably would offer me a better paycheck, to be honest. There's a lot of companies that would offer me a better paycheck, and the answer is no. I would not leave Echo. What is your advice to break plateaus if it wasn't for deloads? Don't plateau. Like I know it sounds crazy, but that's literally my advice to not plateau. Is you shouldn't be doing things that cause you to plateau. If you're plateauing because you're constantly overtraining, that's an issue. You need to fix your programming in general. If you feel like you need to deload every 12 weeks, like you suggested before, then that means that you are training improperly. You need to fix that. Either you're training too hard, too many sets, too often, combination of the three. You got to figure that out. Ever think about trying Olympia level competing? No, no, I would never get to the Olympia level. You have to do some things that I'm not willing to do to get to the Olympia level, and even regardless as to whether I was willing to do those things, whether I would have the capability of even getting to that level is low, right? You have to be the best of the best. What's your favorite way to do an overhead tricep extension? So I like using a Vulcan grip or something like that. And then often what I'll do is I'll actually put my hands together because it's a lot harder to stabilize an overhead tricep extension than an underhead, right? When you go overhead, it's harder for you to actually keep the arms completely stable as you move through this path. So all I do is I just put my hands together and then extend like that. When did you find out about Lyle McDonald? What about Lyle McDonald? Did something happen? SLDL for back. I mean, for erectors, it's going to be solid. It's not really going to do a ton for your traps or your lats, assuming you actually have proper programming for those things. But for your erectors, it's going to be pretty solid. We need a TNF Discord. Technically, I think I have one. I just never use it. Why do volume recommendations vary so greatly in SBL? You know the answer. You have to know the answer. Somebody give him the answer. Somebody give him the answer. I'm curious to see if you guys know the answer. If you were on gear, you could hold your own in the Olympia, in my opinion. Well, unfortunately, your opinion doesn't really matter on this. But I appreciate it. Are you going to be present at Fonz's show? I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there or not. Is body recomp possible with maintenance calories? Of course. Yeah. But there's always going to be limitations to it. Also, it depends on how you define maintenance. right? So like the way a lot of people define maintenance, or at least the way a lot of people have been defining maintenance recently, is not what we've considered maintenance for the better half of the last 3 decades. So it really depends on how they're defining it. But I mean, you still can, just within limitations. What are your thoughts on things people can do that are trying to get into the gym content sphere when it's so oversaturated? Well, it's oversaturated with idiots. So all you have to do is not be an idiot, and then you'll be fine. Same with a lot of fields. What happens is people will talk about various fields being oversaturated, and I'm like, okay, but are you good at it? Yeah, then you'll be fine. Problem is, if you're not good at what you do, then yeah, you're gonna sink to the bottom. Like you're not gonna be able to get to the top if you're not good at what you do. So there's various things that you can be good at. You can be good at actually helping people. You can be good at entertaining people. You can be good at the quality of videos that you put across in terms of they're very visually appealing, or you can have a combination of those factors. There's a lot of things you can do, but you have to be a standout in at least one of those areas. Is your Ramon glaze just you trying to tap into the Brazil market or what? What are you talking about? If you don't objectively think Ramon looked great at this last Olympia, then you're just an idiot. And you know how I feel about idiots. How do you define maintenance then? So I've always defined maintenance as the total usable energy on the body staying the same in terms of your fat and muscle stores. Um, Now people are defining it differently. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, if you define it differently, then obviously your overall recommendations for food relative to maintenance is going to be completely different. But the way I've always defined it is if you have a certain amount of fat on your body and a certain amount of muscle on your body, there's a total caloric value assigned to both of those tissues. And then if you are eating the amount that you need in order to keep the total value the same, then that would be maintenance. Right? It doesn't necessarily mean you're maintaining your weight, but you're maintaining the usable energy sources on your body, i.e., fat and muscle stores. And at that point, if those things are equivalent to each other based on the amount that you are eating and staying equivalent to each other, then you would be eating at maintenance calories. I hope I'm not an idiot, Daddy. Well, you did just call me Daddy, so. Upper lower is now preferred over PPL because of frequency, but I don't get it. Isn't it 2 times a week either way if you're doing upper lower 2 times only and not 3 times? What the people who are doing upper lower twice a week would argue. Now, there are a lot of people who have actually moved to doing upper lower 3 times a week, but the people that are doing upper lower 2 times a week would argue that you're getting more rest and therefore you're going to have a higher quality session for each of those times that you're actually training. Whether that's true or not is yet to be elucidated, but that's what people would argue. So what is TDEE? Like, how would you track that? I mean, tracking it perfectly is an impossibility, but typically the way people track it is through weight. Why did Paul Carter cut off his friendship with you and is talking crap about you online? Nah, he made a few comments, but there was a misunderstanding. He had thought that he had he had thought that I had jilted him a little bit. And so at that point, and so he made some comments. We talked things over, and I think we're fine. It is objectively true. What is objectively true? Prague predictions, Samson versus Keon. It's it depends, right? If Samson comes in on point, I don't think Keon can beat him just because of the size difference right now. But if Samson comes in off, then obviously it's anybody's game. Most gym content is so boring. As long as what you're making has an audience, then you're fit to go into content. It's true. It's true. Uh, can you tell me your current back workout? Okay, so what I typically do for back right now is I will do a couple lat variations. I'll do a frontal pull of some sort and then a sagittal pull, just because lats are always something that I'm looking to bring up. Then I will do a kelso or a row, typically a kelso, but one or the other, Kelso or row. And then I will do a more upright shrug, not completely upright, but pretty darn close to it. And then I will have some rear delt work. Can depend on based on the day what I'm going to do, but typically it's going to be some sort of like bent over machine of some sort. And then we will have, I mean, it could also be reverse pec deck. I like that too. And then I'll have some level of elbow flexor work going on to finish it off. Bought the fat loss book, but got a new phone and I can't re-download. Do I have to repurchase? I got a new phone and can't re-download. I don't know. I've never dealt with that issue before. Um, I mean, maybe send an email about it and we can see if we can figure something out, but I'm not sure. Why two different shrugs? Because the traps aren't all going in the same direction, the fibers for the traps. People will do exercises for their upper pecs and then their sternocostal head, yet they won't do the same thing for their traps, and I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. Would you be bigger than Mundy if he was natty, or is he just black? He's just black. Can't do it, man. He's just black. Uh, are 3 sets of unilateral tricep pull downs enough per week if tries are a strong point of mine? So it depends on what you mean by enough, right? The problem with the word enough is it completely depends on the context. So if you're saying, is it enough for you to maintain whatever tricep gains you've made up to this point? Maybe. If you're asking, is it enough to continue growing? Maybe not. So the conversation has to change based on what you're defining as enough. How do you standardize shrugs? Honestly, I would say shrugs are one of the harder exercises to standardize. So basically, as long as you're progressing over time in the amount of weight that you move, it's like I'm going to know at some point or another that I'm progressing. I think people get very, very caught up in perfect standardization when it's more so, can you see that some level of progression is being made from some sort of standardized form over time? So it might not be perfect, but it'll still be progression. Do you wish you were black? Every day. I have been training hard for like 20 weeks now and I just started to plateau and feeling tired in the gym. Now everyone keeps suggesting a deload. I don't know what to do. Unk, my program is fine. No, it's not. Like, you can't simultaneously tell me that you're burnt out and that your program is fine. That doesn't make sense. It's like me saying, I don't even know. I don't even know. That's like me saying, I'm moving forward, but somehow going back. It's like it's an oxymoron. If your programming was fine, you wouldn't be burnt out. So your programming is an issue. That doesn't mean it's a huge issue. It could be something that's pretty easily solvable, but it's still an issue. But that's what I was saying about reactive deloads, right? If you're legitimately regressing to a significant extent because you're overtrained, just take a reactive deload, take a few days off. It's that simple. And then adjust your programming. I wish I was you. I think you mean you wish you were me. Let's get that English right. It's like saying I have no appetite, but I'm super hungry. It is. It is. Would it be good to main gain at 15%, or would you recommend going to 12? Been aggressive cutting for 2 months. I'm 180. Dude, just stay at 15. Whenever somebody asks me that, I always know where the question is coming from. The question is coming from the fact that they're tired of cutting, that it's been kind of exhausting. They're like, should I keep going? Like, stop. Stop. This is not some short term like sprint where you have to get to point A to point B as fast as possible. If you're feeling burnt out from dieting, stop dieting. Stop dieting, level out, get yourself feeling good. If you want to shave off a little bit later, shave off a little bit later. Is it worth taking magnesium? I like magnesium. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to take it. You might be completely fine on your magnesium levels, but I personally take magnesium. $129 for this question. I don't think it was 129 US dollars, to be honest. If it was, then that's crazy. But I don't know what the MX is. Are those real dollars or Monopoly dollars? Uh, could have gave that money to to me, Eric. Sheesh. Uh, TNF net worth leaked. Yes, it's 129 MX. Whatever he just gave me, that is now my net worth. How long are you doing low protein for? Today's actually my last day. Today's my last day. I just made a full YouTube video on it, sent it over to my editor. We'll get that out to you guys, but today's the last day. If all RDLs are hit daily as a multivitamin, RDIs are hit daily, is a multivitamin a good idea or not? You can. It's like, so what you have to understand is when it comes to vitamins, simply just stacking more on top of it in most cases is not going to do a whole lot. So you can, but I don't want you to feel like you absolutely have to. How come a lot of veg, the macros don't add up to the calories with carbs, protein, fat? How do we track the macros when they don't add up? I hit my cals, but my carbs off by 150 grams. Cals are more important, right? So if you're gonna have to pick one or the other to be completely on point, then just keep your calories on point and adjust those. Because what you're referring to, the reason that the calories, macros are going to be off is because one, there's going to be rounding errors that happen, and when those rounding errors are compiled on top of each other, then it's going to get bigger and bigger. But the other thing is things like fiber, right? A gram of fiber is a gram of carbs. Your body doesn't metabolize fiber the same way as it metabolizes sucrose. So it's going to count the calories differently for that fiber versus the sucrose. So it's still a gram of carbs, but that doesn't mean it's 4 calories, or at least you're not going to metabolize 4 calories. Yeah, by the way, if you spam questions and I notice that you're spamming questions, I just won't answer. I just won't take your question. Try to have a little bit of respect for the chat. Thank you. How important do you consider flexibility? For flexibility's sake, I don't consider it important at all. But I do think it is important to be able to work through the range of motion that you want to in order to accomplish tasks. So, no, I'm not going to feel like I need to touch my head to my shin bone when it comes to my hamstrings. Does that mean that I'm not going to work my hamstrings through a reasonable range that I think I could benefit from? Absolutely not. So, as long as you're working through ranges that you need, you'll be fine. But in terms of just getting more flexible for flexibility's sake, it's just not that important. Do I really need hip thrust and abduction if I have split squats, leg press, and SLDLs? Will I get complete glute development? No, you won't. So the problem with the questions like that is you are trying to take a minimalistic mindset for maximalist growth, and it's just not going to happen. So if you're saying, will I still be able to develop some good glutes while doing those exercises? Of course, absolutely. But will you develop the best glutes you could possibly develop? No. And let me ask you this. If glutes was the most important muscle group, like the most important muscle group to you, are you actually telling me that you would never isolate them? Of course not. If glutes were the most important muscle group to you, you would 100% do isolation work for them. The reason you don't is because glutes aren't as important to you as other muscle groups, and that's completely fine. Just recognize it for what it is. Love you. Thanks for answering. No problem, Eric. Is JM press for the long head? No, the long head will not get worked meaningfully within a JM press. How's my day been so far? My day's been great. If my butt is mostly fat, is it worth training glutes or will I just get a fatter butt? I mean, it's a combination of the two, right? If your butt's mostly fat and you train your glutes, you're going to get a bigger dumpy, assuming you don't lose the fat on top of it. But if you cut down to show leanness, then your butt's going to be really small because there's no muscle. It's that simple. YouTube goals for 2026? Well, let's see where we currently are for YouTube. All right, go on OBS, then go to settings in bottom right. Go to video, I believe, and where it says bitrate, change it to 50K. Try that. Bitrate. I don't see. Oh, wait. Um, go to video. Go to bitrate. I don't see bitrate. Where is. What is happening? Why can I not click on anything? I don't see it. I don't see it. It's not. Video output is currently active. Please turn off any outputs to change video settings. Oh, I think it would make me stop streaming to change it. Dang, that's unfortunate. Sorry. Who TF told you 50K? Chill. I got this from my tech support. Chill. Are keto bread calories accurate? I mean, probably not, if we're being completely honest. So I've always to things like keto bread, keto products, whatever else. If it's coming out of a package and you're like, oh, well, these calories must be right. Probably not. Probably not. There's probably some level of variance. Some aspects are off with a majority of products. So all it's going to come down to is what your overall actions say over time. So if you're like, oh, I don't understand why I'm not losing weight. I'm eating 1,600 calories and all of your food is like packaged food. I'm like, okay, well, it might not be 1,600. You might be eating 2,200 and you don't realize it. But as long as you bring the overall amount down, you'll lose weight. So that's all it comes down to. You just basically take and you analyze your weight over time. You see, is it trending the direction I want? And if it's trending the direction you want, then you're good. If it's not trending the direction you want, make an adjustment. Most common reasons of inability to progressively overload when training with about 8 to 10 sets per muscle, most take into failure. Impatience. That's honestly the most common one. Typically, what happens is people are very impatient. So they'll be like, I don't understand. I'm training with 8 to 10 sets per week. Why am I not progressing? Most of my sets are close to or to failure. Why am I not progressing? I'm like, well, how long has it been since you progressed? Well, like I went up like a rep in like the past 3 weeks. I'm like, that's progression. You're just impatient. Is it true that Mundy is 25? Yes. Or he might be 26 by this point. I don't know, but he was 25 not that long ago when I asked him. Could I beat a sumo fighter? Not a good one. Although we were at the Olympia the other day, and I could beat some of those sumo fighters because they had people doing sumo fighting at the Olympia, and it was like it was weird. It was like they completely disregarded weight classes and just had randoms fight each other. And I was like, half the people were like 150 pounds. I was like, okay, well, I could win that. But it was always obvious who was going to win when they stepped up. Because it would be like some guy who was 250, and then it would be some guy who was like 160, and they'd step and be like, okay, well, like, what is this? And then the 250 guy would win, and I'd be like, oh, shocker. And it happened every single time. Uh, is intense cardio harder than intense lifting? It depends on what you mean by harder. It's more drawn out. Also depends on how many reps you're doing for lifting. So, why did my thing stop moving? What happened? Why did it stop moving? Whoa, that was weird. Sorry. Yeah, it all depends on what you mean by what's tougher, right? In the moment, doing an intense set of squats for like 20 reps is going to be 10 times harder than the majority of cardio you do. But then it's going to come down to what type of workout are you doing and how many reps are you doing. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, is it really muscle building or is it cardio or is it a combination of the two? And but it all depends on what you're referring to. I copy your TikTok live exercises, but I do upper lower two times. Is it fine if my upper days is 25 sets total? I progress often. If you're progressing, you're fine. Um, people get so people get so worked up over everything like, is this okay? Is this okay? I'm like, have you been progressing? They're like, yeah. Are you getting bigger? Yeah. I'm like, it's fine. Like, chill. You'll be okay. I've been watching Christian debates with atheists. I feel lost. What should I watch because I want to believe? What should you watch? Oh, that's a tough question. I mean, you have people who there's people debating constantly. Um, hmm. It depends on what aspects you're trying to get into, right? So if you're trying to get into like ancient manuscripts and stuff like that, then Wes Huff is a pretty good guy. He's pretty good at conveying concepts. Um, there's lots of there. I mean, there's just constantly people going back and forth on various things. So it's hard to give you like one set thing to do. But if you put in like Christian versus atheist on pretty well anywhere, you're going to find various people you can listen to, like Lennox and who are some other ones that might be a little bit more uh, reachable. I'd have to think through, but I think you should listen to everybody. Honestly, I sometimes I find that people, and I think you should do the same thing when it comes to science based lifting. You should be listening to both sides of the aisle on a variety of things and learn how to think through issues. Carb intake recommendation, and just eat as many carbs as you can while hitting your the other macros that you need, while not going so far into it that you're getting fat. It's really as simple as that. People overcomplicate carbs. Do me and Dorian have beef? I don't think so. Uh, Wes Huff is a joke. Wow. Sorry, Adrian. That sucks. I mean, he understands ancient manuscripts better than the vast majority of people. So that wasn't at the aspect that I was referring to, but I'm sure you're much more intelligent. uh, how important is protein quality? It kind of depends. As long as you're getting enough overall, you'll probably be fine. I don't think it's something that you need to concern yourself with that greatly if you're getting enough overall protein. If Tori allowed you to start taking gear, what stack would you personally run? I'm a pretty big fan of the safer model. So, if you are looking to start into cycles, typically, typically, not always, typically the way that I recommend is to start simple, just test base, figure out what your tolerance is, start low, build your way up over time, figure out kind of what you can handle, and then adding in other compounds as you are able to and as your blood work says that you can. And you are smarter than people with PhD and years of experience. Where are the quotations coming from? Did I say that? I'm confused as to where the quotations are coming from. Who do I think will win UEFA Champions League this year? I don't know. I haven't been following. I'll be completely honest. Is a super soldier serum realistic? I mean, depends what you mean by realistic. Uh, it realistic that there is a super soldier serum out there? There's quite a few. We call them anabolic steroids. but they don't work the way they do in the comics, obviously, and definitely not as fast. Well, he is definitely smarter than Mike Israetel. I'm so confused. Where did the "you are smarter than people with PhD and years of experience" quotation come from? Who are we quoting? I don't even know what's happening right now. Is Preacher Girls and tricep pushdowns enough for arms to maximize growth? No. A YouTube live finally? Yes. Dead stopping effectiveness? I mean, they're like, oh, sometimes these questions drive me crazy. You can dead stop exercises and grow. We've known that forever, right? Like, I think sometimes people are like, they're getting confused because we're dead stopping on machines or that people are dead stopping on machines. And so they get confused. So they're like, wait, this is effective? It's like, dude, what do you think a pause bench is? What do you think a pause squat is? Those are literally dead stops. They've been done forever. Why do people neglect forearms? I don't know. Couldn't be me. Couldn't be me. No, I'm just kidding. Mostly because of the fact that it's gonna hinder if you're trying to grip everything, it's gonna hinder your output for other muscle groups. So people just don't do it. And then they get lazy and don't do the forearm work on top of it. Yeah, I still don't know where the quote is coming from. What is your bench PR? I think it was like 385 at one point. Touch and go. Relax. Nice to open a pickle jar. Yeah, exactly. What's my weakest point on my physique? It's probably something random that you don't really think about. But the biggest noticeable one for most people is my chest. Well, I would say probably if we're looking at bodybuilders notice lats, right? Because obviously you always want to have a good lat sweep in bodybuilding. But if we're talking about the average person would notice more chest, which is unfortunate because those are two of the most important muscle groups in bodybuilding. Sucks to suck. Your physique is top notch, no weak points, TBH, bro. Bro. I'm sorry. I've taught you guys better than that. If you follow me closely enough to glaze on that level, then you should also know that I challenge you guys to be objective with your analyses. So, saying that tells me that you're not willing to be objective in favor of smothering with compliments. And it's just I can't respect that. How much water should you drink? We have this really nice thing where our brain tells us when we should drink more. It's called thirst, right? So satisfy your thirst on a consistent basis, and you're going to be okay. Maybe drink a little bit more than you would typically if you're having issues with your digestive tract or something like that. But don't overthink it. Favorite Echo creatine flavor? Ooh, favorite. Probably raspberry watermelon. That one's just a nice, solid, smooth flavor. Unk, that was not Wakanda tough. That was not Wakanda tough? What the heck is happening? Oh, bro is from a place where money not is not worth anything. 20,000? What even is that? What what units is that? I appreciate it, but I need to figure out what that unit is because that is weird. IDR. No, IDR currency. Ah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Oh, that's worth. Oh, that's insane. 1 to 15,500? That's insane. That's insane. But you are welcome, Dita. You are welcome. That's crazy. It's like at that point, just get a new unit, you know? Like, I mean, the Canadian dollar, it's like something, usually it's somewhere around like 70 to 80 cents compared to the US dollar. I'm like, okay, that makes sense, right? It's not that far off. When you have to go over 100, when you have to go into the thousands for a unit, like, just get a bigger unit. Make a new unit that's a bigger unit. You're paying like a million rupees to get a loaf of bread. What even is that? That's crazy. That's crazy. But you are welcome. You are welcome. I'm not roasting you. Just I'm like it just doesn't make sense to me. Just make a new unit. You know? Do you think Kai and Phil would win today? At their best, yes. I think Kai. I saw some comparisons of Kai when he was at his best relative to the guys that were on stage today, and I think Kai would win. Phil, obviously, right? Phil's top three bodybuilder of all time, but Kai, I think, would win. Do you love sport bikes? I'm gonna be completely honest, no. Um, what are your thoughts on Jeff Nippard and the hate he's been getting lately? I'm gonna be completely honest. I'm not a pile up guy. I've never been that way. So when I see somebody, it's like when I see somebody get hate, and then what happens is it's like then it opens the floodgates for everybody that's ever had a grievance to like start going after that person, and then they're like, oh yeah, and guess what? I'm like, you're just an opportunist at that point. It's like, why is this just coming out now? Like, why are you just saying this now? Like, he existed for the last 10 years. I don't know. I don't know. He's finally coming out as a fake natty. Jeff? What? Now that I have not heard about. Do you know something I don't? Does Alexander, I'm not even going to say his last name, does he know something that I don't know? Who's two of all time? So Ronnie Coleman is obviously best bodybuilder of all time. Then the conversation for two and three becomes a little bit more convoluted. Some people would argue that Jay Cutler at his prime is like second of all time. Some people would argue Phil is second of all time. Very rarely do other people put different people in their top three, or I should say, very rarely do people who are looking at it objectively do that. But you could make arguments for a few others as well. I think Yates can make a conversation for top five. I don't necessarily see him as being in my top three. I think he had a few too many weak points for that. But overall, typically the top three, the Mount Rushmore of mass monster era bodybuilders is going to be Ronnie, Jay, and Phil. Peak Big Ramy. So it's always tough because I struggle with that because I don't like putting somebody in my top bodybuilders of all time when they really only came in to that level once, right? When you have a guy who repeats year after year after year, it's much easier to be solidified in your opinion of that bodybuilder. But could peak Big Ramy compete with the big dogs? Yes, he could. But to put him in that level with them when they are like 5, 6, 7, 8 time Mr. Olympias, it's like it doesn't feel right. What were Dorian's weak points other than arms? Legs. It's literally his appendages in general. All right, like his legs didn't have the same level of lines, size as some of these other competitors. Now he's obviously still huge, but his legs are not going to compete with like a Ronnie. Da, 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 da. How do you find purpose? How do I find purpose personally, or how do people find purpose? So purpose is a tough one because I come at it from a Christian lens. So my purpose is found in Christ. But if you don't come at it from that perspective, you're going to have a much different outlook on what purpose looks like. Um, I'm not saying that people can't have meaningful lives without Christ, but it becomes significantly more difficult when your life is completely dictated the on the thought that this is all there is, right? It's much harder to derive meaning from that. So it makes it tough. Uh, but obviously, people who are atheists, non-believers, have been able to at least convince themselves that they've found some level of meaning in their lives. To me, it doesn't make sense. That's my personal belief, but I mean, I think people have come to peace at times with where their situation is. I just think it's doesn't really make sense when you take a look at it from a logical perspective. How much is enough overall protein for max gains? Hard to say. Hard to say. It seems like there's a pretty big inflection point once you get to around 1.3 grams per kilogram. And past that point, people debate. But right now, there's a lot of people saying, oh, don't go over like zero point 0.7 or zero point 0.8. I'm just of the opinion that I might as well go above. And if it ends up being wrong in the future, then I'm willing to take that risk. Imagine if Dorian trained with Tom Platz for just legs. It wouldn't make any difference. Um, the idea that Tom Platz somehow knew something that nobody else did for training legs is just, in my opinion, unfounded. There were lots of people that had bigger legs than Platts. People don't want to accept this, but there are plenty of people who have had bigger legs than Platts past Platts's time era. He was just the one who had the outstanding legs at that time. And he had also amazing shape to go along with it and good lines. And because of that, people really, really overstate what Tom Platts's legs actually were. But they are obviously still incredible, right? Don't want anybody to mistake me on that. The problem is God doesn't exist. Yeah, it's your belief. That's fine. I honestly like I think people expect me to be like mad or upset when people hold that view. No, not at all. Um Recommendations on programming to build up chest, like exercises, frequency, and volume. It's the same as other muscle groups. If you're trying to figure out, oh, well, what should the programming be like for chest? It's like same as other muscle groups. It's not really going to be all that different, if different at all. But flies, presses, multiple angles, you'll be good to go. Uh, I mean, it's more like finding comfort in meaning being subjective and finding your own way from there. Well, yeah, but I mean, there really isn't meaning at that point. It's just being okay. being at peace with this, with the fact that there isn't meaning. That's really what it would come down to. Like there, I've always found issue when I I always find it very interesting when when atheists try to tell me about the meaning of life, or like how they've derived their meaning and their purpose, and I'm like, You don't have one. You don't." Like, I'm not saying that you can't like doing things, you can't enjoy doing things. Obviously you can have that chemical reaction going on, but the idea of like purpose and meaning, it's very, very hard to come to that conclusion when you legitimately believe that you are here by chance, randomly, just existing until it's time for you to go into the ground and it's done. Do you know Levan Saganezija? He's the top arm wrestler. I did not know that was his last name, but I have heard of Levan. What's the problem with subjective morality? Um, do you mean what's the problem with it for society or for an individual? Because those are two pretty different questions. Uh, what are your thoughts on Alex Hormozy? To be completely honest, I have not. I know of Alex Hormozy and I'll see clips here and there of him speaking, but that's about it. I don't really know much about him overall. Why are your triceps bigger than my head? I've been asking myself that since the beginning. I just don't understand how I could choose one singular religion. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, like, that's honestly, that I think that that take is more is actually a smarter take overall. I think a lot of times what happens is you get people who get very entrenched in their own beliefs, and because of that, they have a very hard time going outside of themselves and understanding the way that other people think. It's like, oh, you're an idiot. It's this. It's like, no, you have to actually take a look at other people's viewpoints and understand how they could have come to those conclusions. So coming to the conclusion that you're not really sure how you could pick a singular religion, like that would be tough for you to do, is a completely valid and honestly pretty, it's a pretty it's a deeper take than even I think you realize it is, which is honestly, it's a good starting point. It's a good starting point. You can totally have purpose when being an atheist. Most do. Go ahead, expound. You feeling like you have purpose and actually having purpose are not the same thing. So, yeah, once let's divorce feelings from reality. And I would love for you to explain to me how you can have purpose as an atheist. You might have a completely different definition of purpose. That might be the fundamental thing that we disagree on. What is the best Batman Arkham game you've played? I haven't played Batman Arkham. I've seen clips from it and it looks dope, but I haven't played it. You make your purpose. That's circular logic. It's like it's like, what is a square? A square is a square. That doesn't make any sense. You make your purpose? That doesn't make any sense. I'm asking what purpose is. Religion is also feeling you have purpose. Correct. Correct. The difference is it's a feeling that it's something outside of yourself, right? And so what happens is when you're saying it's a feeling you have purpose, no, no, it's what it is an acknowledgement of the fact that your purpose is something outside of yourself and outside of this world. But it's very, very hard to make that argument that you have purpose when you come from an atheistic perspective. Purpose to live a happy life. That doesn't make any sense. Your purpose is to have a happy life. So what happens when you don't have a happy life? Like, do you no longer have purpose if you're not happy all the time? What if you're happy makes somebody else sad? How's that purpose? Yes, enjoy your life on earth. Okay, where did you get that enjoyment from? What is good? What is bad? Like you're just your purpose is to just have dopamine. That's what you're saying. Your purpose is dopamine. So should you be chasing dopamine all the time? Not all the time? Like what are we actually going for? What are we striving for? Feels like shaming you into religion even if it's not intended. So the reason it feels like shame is because I'm basically asking you to think. And a lot of people have not thought about their lives more than the next 2 days. So what happens is when you start talking through deeper subjects like this, it feels like shaming. It's not shaming. It's just asking you to think on a deeper level. If I live every day with the intent and goal to take care of my family, how can that not be a purpose? No, it's a purpose, but where does that purpose come from? Why does it matter? Like, why does it matter what you do for your family? And why does it stop at your family? What about your neighbor? What about your neighborhood? What about your city? Why your family? Right? Like a lot of these things are very, very hard to justify when you get down to the bare essentials. Or I shouldn't say justify, but actually derive meaning. I thought this was an evidence based channel. What's with this religion talk? Oh, dang. How is anything we talked about so far not evidence based? I'm asking you for very basic philosophical concepts. Ugh. I would say I've definitively thought about my life, but trust me, but you basically said I have no purpose. So what in your mind, what should an atheist do then? What should me, an atheist, do then? I mean, I'm a Christian. Obviously, my will for you, my hope for you is that you would become a Christian. If you don't become a Christian, that doesn't mean I'm not going to love you. But I would say that your life lacks purpose. That's just my belief though, right? You don't have to believe that. What's my purpose? To make Christ known. That is my purpose. Do people of other religions have a purpose? It's a very good question. So what it would be is if you were to ask me as a person, as to what I believe, I would believe that they have a false sense of purpose. That doesn't mean that they don't legitimately believe they have a purpose, right? Same thing with the atheists who have been saying in here, like, oh, I believe I have purpose. What's your purpose? My purpose is to be happy. It's like, okay, so dopamine, right? Chasing dopamine. Well, my purpose is to take care of my family. It's like, okay, but why does it matter? What meaning is there in taking care of your family? They just happen to share some DNA structure of yours. But what is the actual purpose behind that? Right? And then you get to deeper conversations. I mean, I'm just telling you what I believe. That doesn't mean that I'm right. Right? I could be wrong. Thoughts on Nietzsche? I haven't read much from Nietzsche, to be honest. I mean, I've seen some individual philosophies, but I haven't read a lot of Nietzsche. What's a Christian's purpose out of interest? I already told you. To make Christ known, to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. How does one achieve a thicker wrist? Wrist. Dang. Bone smashing? Go get a hammer? No. Ultimately, you just lift and then your bones are going to adapt to some extent, but your wrists are going to be your wrists. right? You're probably not going to be able to get your wrist a whole lot thicker. What you should be worrying about is the muscle surrounding your wrist. That's what you should be worrying about, because that you can actually fix. AOT or One Piece, the people need to know. I mean, it's obviously AOT. It is obviously. I'm sorry. I've been watching One Piece now for months. I'm on episode like 340, I think, and it's like, I mean, it's got to be AOT. Oh, but you haven't seen episode 467. If it takes you that long for me to be convinced that One Piece is better, AOT was already done 5 times over by this point. It means that the character development and the story development is better. Sorry. If I believe in the science too much about Big Bang and so on, I find it hard to believe in God at the same time. That's fine. That's fine. A lot of times people who haven't dealt with intellectual Christianity often find themselves saying the reason I don't believe in God is because I believe in science, not realizing that there are many top scientists in the world who are simultaneously Christian. And so what happens is they view Christianity and science as at odds with one another, where the intellectual Christian would say that Christianity and science actually go hand in hand, and that science is the observable way to examine God's creation. Can you prove Christianity? Nope. Nope. And I think honestly, it kind of annoys me when people say they can, right? I think you can give evidence, but as far as proving Christianity, no, you can't. That's why it's called faith. Like it literally wouldn't be faith if it could be proven definitively. It wouldn't. That's not how faith works. That would be an oxymoron, or a, I don't even know if oxymoron is the right word for it. Can you explain how they go hand in hand? I mean, I can tell you why I think they go hand in hand, right? There is a lot of order in the universe. Now, people would use big numbers to basically explain that. It's like, okay, big numbers really don't explain, in my opinion, a lot of the things that we see. Even if you take a look at basic things like cell theory and stuff like that, I don't think I think it's kind of interesting that cell theory applies to everything except for things like origins. And that's where you get to very, very tough conversations when you deal with people who view everything as having a naturalistic explanation. And you start dealing with things like the origin of life. And it's like they're willing to hold on to all of these principles and tenets within science until it disagrees with them, which Origins 100% does. And anybody who says it doesn't to some degree, I think is being a little bit, they're either being intentionally misleading or they are legitimately a little bit unaware of the scientific method and the processes behind it. Because when you start dealing with things like origins, the initiation of the first cell, to act like that the theories that we have behind that are incredibly scientific is pretty bad. It's very illogical and goes against the scientific method. It would be knowledge, not faith, correct. But then how did Levon achieve 10-inch wrist? Is there a type of steroid that does that? Growth hormone. I think growth hormone will lead to some bone hypertrophy. But why specifically into Christianity if the evidence isn't solid? You can still have faith on a sort of God, but not necessarily the Christian God. That's probably one of the smartest takes that I've seen so far in this comment section. And I've always told people that. I have told people straight up, I'm like, look, if you want to ask me why I believe in God, I believe in God actually due to science, which is, I know that like a lot of people in here would think that that's strange. I actually believe in God due to science. The reason I believe in Christianity is faith, right? So I think science does point to there being a creator, but my faith is what leads me to Christ. So they're two different conversations. Levon took a crap ton of HGH. He started out with 7-inch wrists. His face changed. Yeah, I mean, HGH is an interesting thing. What types and ratios of fat do we need when relatively low fat for higher carbs? Um, this is one that's been kind of hard to elucidate over time. Uh, I'm not saying that we can't eventually get to a point where we know exactly. We don't actually know. No, I think with when it comes to the fats conversation, there are different fats, right? So if you want to get hyper specific, if we're dealing with like omega 6s, omega 3s, you could probably get yourself down to a lower fat amount than what I typically consume. But typically I will consume anywhere in the neighborhood of like 1/3 to 1/2 of my body weight in fat. So typically for me, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 60 plus grams of fat is where I try to aim. If I'm going below 60 grams, I tend to run into various issues, dry skin, sleep, just overall like energy, mood just isn't quite as high as when my fats are a little bit higher. That doesn't necessarily mean it's because of the gram amount. It could be because of the types of fats I'm getting as well and the various processes that those fats do. But overall, I typically recommend for people to try and get about a third of their body weight, and more specifically, a third of their lean mass plus. Because if we're dealing with somebody who's 400 pounds, they obviously don't need, unless they're all muscle, which is not happening, they don't need a third of their body weight in terms of fat intake. Can I explain Catholicism? Phew. Depends what you mean by explain Catholicism. I would not be able to do it justice, no. Honestly, hearing you talk about Christianity makes me want to research it and how science and religion can go together. Thank you. No problem. No problem. And if you come to the conclusion that you don't think they go together, that's something you'll have to come to the conclusion on your own. But I believe they do. Saturated fats will create a greater ratio of NAD plus, NADH minus, which can help prevent NADH positive, NADH negative, which can help prevent deceleration of the citric acid cycle. Dang. Dang. I'm getting technical on us. I'd have to look into that pathway to make sure it's true. So don't. I know they said it, but I'm not gonna take that at face value. It could be possible. I'd have to look into it. Uh, where would you start on researching science and Christianity? Honestly, probably your best bet is to just look into major scientists who are Christian and then start reading stuff from them, right? Because I could be like, oh, like you should start studying on your own. It's like, okay, that's just tough, right? I think a lot of times what happens is, and this like you don't want to be somebody who just appeals to authority on everything, but if you're trying to get your feet wet on a subject and you don't use other people in order to do so, you're gonna run into issues, right? It's very hard to figure out a lot of things completely on your own. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. So I think sometimes what will happen is people will be like, "Oh, well, people today are smarter." I'm like, "No, they aren't." No, they aren't. What we have an abundance of knowledge and previously accumulated research done by other people who are basing their research off of other people, and it's all built up over time. Uh, when will I compete? Good question. Good question. I don't know yet. I don't know. I want to do better than I did last time, right? That's always the goal when you compete. You're really not like, sure, you're competing against other people, but the primary goal when you compete, in my opinion, should be to do better than you did the last time. So whenever I think that I will have a legitimate shot of being significantly better than I was last time, that's when I'll go to stage. You going live on TikTok tomorrow? I don't know. I don't know. I've been wanting to do more workouts where I'm just focused on the workout and not necessarily going live while doing it. That's part of the reason why I'm doing this live today. I'm trying to separate my lives from my workouts a little bit more. But what's your answer for the problem of evil? What do you mean by answer, right? I guess it would depend on what you mean by what's your answer for the problem of evil. Like, I don't have an answer. So I guess I'd need you to go a little bit more in depth on what you mean by my answer. Uh, how did you learn about all the science stuff and all the bodybuilding knowledge you talk about in your videos? Did you go back to college after being a teacher? No. Honestly, most stuff is open access. Sure, there's going to be some things that are locked behind paywalls, but there's a ton of stuff just available for everybody, right? Now, I will say this, right? Sometimes people are like, well, where do I start? I'm like, you start with things like this, right? You start by listening to people like me. You start by listening to people, other people, like not just me, right? You start by listening to other people who are talking through scientific concepts. And then you start to ask, okay, where did you get those concepts from? Let me go look into that literature myself. If you don't know how to analyze literature, there will be some very, very easy tutorials that you can look up on how to analyze stuff on a more basic level. I'm not saying you'll be perfect at it, but you'll at least get a grasp on things. And then what you can do is you can say, all right, is there stuff that contradicts this? Go looking for stuff that contradicts it. Figure out, okay, if the stuff that contradicts it, why does it contradict it? Is it done in a better format? Is there more like this? Or does the majority, and a lot of what you'll find is there's going to be, especially within the world of nutrition and health sciences, there's going to be a lot of literature that contradicts. And you'll have very often is you'll have people who don't acknowledge that. And instead, what they'll do is they'll say, this brand new study says this. It's like, yeah, but what do the rest of the studies say? It's like, well, this is brand new. It's like, okay, just because it's new doesn't mean it's better. And so then you have to examine what are the methodologies behind it. Why did it come to those conclusions? Is it better than the stuff we had previously, or is it just adding to the overall body that we have? And then does it actually change what you're going to implement into your training, nutrition, etc.? And I think what happens a lot of times is people are so obsessed with garnering new information that they don't take the second to just adjust and say, is this actually going to be of practical relevance for me to change what I'm doing? And people will change things on a whim based on something new rather than waiting to see, all right, does this actually pan out in the long run? And that's why you get people doing a lot of crazy stuff, unfortunately. Where did you learn about how to read blood test results? Oh, lots of places. There are various people who I follow who are much better at blood work than I am. So I'll learn stuff from them, but then I'll also go look into things. There's a guy on TikTok specifically. He does Instagram too, obviously, but he goes by One Hot Trail. He's a friend of mine, and I've learned a lot of stuff from him. He's been very good. He's a guy that I'll ask him a question and he'll send me back legitimate essays on topics. Like he's a very, very thorough guy. So you have various people who you learn to trust over time, but that does not mean that you take everything they say as the law, right? I think this is where people have a hard time differentiating because there are times where you have to offload some level of your knowledge, right? You cannot be perfect in every area. And there are some people who are going to be better at some areas than you are, and you're going to be better at some areas than they are, assuming you actually develop some competency in some field. And then you have to figure out, okay, if they say this, do I have the time and the resources to actually figure out whether it's perfect or not? No. All right, I'm probably going to operate under the assumption that what they're saying is true in this area. And then if I have the ability to look into it later, then I absolutely will. But overall, I can be pretty confident that certain people have done their homework in certain areas. Uh, Do I think Hadi was robbed? No, not necessarily. But I do think there's a good argument for him having won. And I think there can be both things can be true simultaneously, right? You can think that it's not a robbery while simultaneously admitting that X person looked better in X competition, right? So I think there's a very, very big, and there should be a very, very big and clear difference between robbery and wrong decision, right? You can believe that there's a wrong decision while not believing there's a robbery. Robbery should be reserved for outright, like, oh my gosh, this guy was so much better in so many areas than the other person. How on earth could you have come to that conclusion? Right? That's where robbery should be reserved for. And I think people are too loose with the word robbery. Uh, there was a question that I was trying to answer, but I lost it. Dang, I missed it. Exactly. Thank you for saying that. Don't take what someone says as gospel, even if it's someone you trust. Use what they say as a roadmap that allows you to research slash verify more efficiently. Very well said. Very well said. Robbery is a bit too harsh word. Exactly. Right. When I hear people say Hadi should have won, I have no issue with that, right? I think obviously bodybuilding, especially at the top level when you're dealing with the best physiques in the world, it's a very subjective sport, right? It's not a subjective sport until you get to a certain level, right? I think that's where people get confused, right? They're like, bodybuilding's completely subjective. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. That's why we're arguing over who's the top five, right? We're not arguing that the person who came 15th should have won. Why? Because we know it's not subjective, or at least not completely subjective. There are objective, like there's a lot of objectivity to it, and then there's some level of subjectivity once you get to the best physiques competing against each other, especially when they're not super far off from one another. Right? If Ronnie Coleman was to step on stage, Ronnie Coleman at his best was to step on the stage this year, he would have beat everybody so easily that not a single one of you would be like, oh, well, it's subjective, right? Hadi should have won. Hadi should have won. Derek should have won because it's subjective, right? Nobody was saying that because there's levels to subjectivity. And so when somebody says Hadi should have won, I'm okay with that, right? Everybody's going to have a slightly different opinion and a slightly different outlook, what they value, what they prioritize when it comes to bodybuilding. But when people are like, it was a robbery. It's race. Like I've legitimately heard people be like, it's racism. I'm like, shut up. Samson's won, Hadi's won, Derek has won. It's not about race. It just isn't, right? Sometimes you're going to value some things more heavily than others. If you take a look at prejudging, in my opinion, Derek did win prejudging. I do think Hadi beat Derek at finals, right? I actually agree that Hadi beat Derek at finals. Now the only argument is okay, I shouldn't say only argument, but the biggest argument is were the differences at finals so great to the point where that should have completely overrode prejudging, even if the judges had him winning at prejudging? And I think you can make a good argument for that. I think you can, right? I just don't think it's a robbery. A robbery would be they showed up at prejudging. Oh my gosh, he's bigger, leaner, better shape. Clear winner. They go to finals. Oh my gosh, he's bigger, leaner, better shape. Clear winner. How on earth did you give it to the other person, right? Derek is legitimately bigger. I saw somebody arguing that Derek wasn't bigger than Hadi. I'm like, okay, well, now you're just showing that you're biased. He's obviously bigger, right? It's not even a question mark. He is obviously bigger. Go ahead, go grab their weights, go grab their stats. He is legitimately a bigger human being. But you can argue that Hadi's the better bodybuilder. And that's where those conversations happen. Uh, if I'm not strong enough to do dips, then what are the initial steps to strengthen before that? So you can use bands. If you're trying to get good at dips, what you can do is you can actually take and you can put bands around the bars themselves, and you can use it as a type of support, right? So you can put it underneath your feet, or you can put it across the bars themselves, and you can put your knees on the bands, and like allow yourself to like get some assistance from the bands. Or if they have an actual system where the machine can help you out, where it has a lever system, you can take and you can use that too. Lots of ways to do it. It's lagging right now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But guys, I should probably get going. I was only planning on being on here for an hour, and I think I've been on here for an hour and a half. So I should get going. But if you guys need anything from me, code TNF for most things. If you struggle to get lean and stay lean, I have my fat loss manual there. Stay tuned for the super low protein experiment that I just did. I just made a video on it, so that will be out here in the next few days. But long story short, you don't need to do it. It's not going to do really anything for you, I don't think. So probably not the best move. But I wanted to test some things out for myself. So as always, love you guys. Appreciate you guys. TNF out.